Hey everyone, welcome to Web Dev Metrics. In this video, we are going to see how we can do the payment gateway integration in a React application by using Razorpay. So let's get started. For the Razorpay integration, we have to go to razorpay.com/payment gateway. You'll find this link in the description, and then we have to click on the sign up button. As a part of sign up, it will ask for your mobile number and some basic details. Once you have the sign up done, then you have to complete the KYC process. So as a part of KYC process, you have to enter the business address, bank details, ID proof, and some of the basic details. KYC is essential in order to make actual business transactions. However, you can still test Razorpay without doing KYC. After the sign up, we'll go to this dashboard page. By default, we are in the test mode. Only after the KYC is done, we can go to the live mode. In the test mode, you can integrate your application or use it for the development purpose. On the dashboard, you'll see the status of your account, and you will also see the summary of all the transactions. So currently in this account, few of the transactions were done in the test mode, and you'll see the summary of all the transactions. The 3 transactions and 2 were captured and 1 got failed. And if you click on any of the transaction, then you will see all the details over here. Now, as a part of next step, we'll create an API key. For that, you have to go to the account and settings on the left pane, and under the website and app settings, there's an API keys. So we have to click on this link in order to generate the API key. I have already generated an API key, but you will find a generate button over here, and once you click on it, then let me deactivate the old API keys. It will generate a new API key, which you can also download it to use it. Ensure that you don't share that API key with anyone else and you keep it confidential. This API key is just used for the test mode. For the live mode, you have to generate a separate API key. Now, in order to do the payment checkout on the website, we have to take care of the following 6 steps. So we'll go into each of the steps in detail. So first, we have to create an order on the server side. So let's check out the sample code. Razorpay gives us an API which we have to hit using our API key that we have generated. So we'll pass the amount, the currency, the receipt ID, and few of the other details. It will generate an order ID for us. So the response will look something like this. So it will give us an order ID that we have to use to proceed to the next steps. So we'll try this in the Postman. So we will need basic auth over here, and we have to provide the API key and the secret, the username and the password. And then let's enter the URL, and this is a post API, and in the request body we have to pass, so let's make it raw and JSON type, and we have to pass the amount. So I have entered amount as 500, currency as INR. It supports other currencies as well, and I have entered a sample receipt ID. The reason this API call should be done on the server side is that it involves the API key that we have generated, so it shouldn't be exposed. So that's why we shouldn't make this on the client side. We should always make it on the server side. And if we hit this API, then you can see that gave us a response, and we'll use this order ID in order to proceed to the next step to make the actual payment. So if we go back to this, then we'll see that Razorpay supports a lot of other backend languages like Java, Python, Go, PHP, Ruby, NodeJs. We are going to use NodeJs in this example to create an API where we'll make this API call. Before jumping to Node.js and React, let's try it out in a simple HTML web page. I'm going to create an index.html. So for doing the checkout, we'll use this order ID, and there are 2 ways to do the checkout on the client side. So one is using the handler function. You can see that the example is given over here, and the other is the callback URL. So the handler function on the successful payment, it gives you further other information, like it will give you a response, and in the response it will give you a payment ID, order ID, and the Razorpay signature, which you can use to further validate the payment, whether it's a valid payment or it's a fake payment. But in case of callback URL, it just redirects to a payment success page, and similarly for the failure, it redirects to the failure page. But in case of handler function, it also gives you a reason of the failure. So we are going to use the handler function example in this case. So let me just copy this code, paste this code over here. Okay, and so it will replace this with the API key that we had generated. So to just provide the key ID, not the secret, and in the order ID, we'll use the order ID that we just created, and it has pre-filled some information. So let's go ahead with the same information. Let's launch it. So now you can see that this pay button is over here, and if I click on this pay button, then you can see that now it's showing the pay now, and it's showing typical Razorpay integration where you can pay via card, UPI, net banking, wallet. You can choose to pay later with some of the other integrations that are supported over here. So we'll try by paying with the UPI ID. I'll provide my mobile number. So the payment is successful. After this, it will redirect, and here it will show you the payment ID, the order ID, and the signature which we have logged over here. The payment ID, the order ID, and the Razorpay signature. As a next step, we also need to verify the payment. So if you check over here, so handle payment access and failure. So we have to store the IDs that it has given, and we have to verify the payment signature, whether the payment is valid or not, and then we can verify the payment status. So currently we have just used the sample code that it had given, but now let's see how we can do this in a React application and using a Node.js API to create the order ID and to verify the payment status. So we'll use a create React app, and I'll name it as client. So while this is being created, so let's also create the server, which will be Node.js. I'll name it as server, and let's move into it. And inside the server, I'll do npm init, and let's just enter the default arguments, and we'll need a couple of packages on the server side. Let's install those packages. We will need Express, and we'll need Razorpay. So this is important, need Razorpay. And in addition to that, I will also add .env and nodemon and cors package. So these three packages are optional, but Express and Razorpay are definitely needed. So create React app installation is still going on. Okay, so this is done. Now on the server, let me add an index.js. So over here, let's create few of the APIs that we'll need in the React app. So let me add those APIs. Const app equal to express, and we'll create a .env file where we'll store our API key and the secret. Okay, we'll also store the port number, so we'll use the port number as 5000. So say port equal to process.env.prt, and then we'll create this API first, app.post. So this will be the order API that we are going to use. So we'll need the Razorpay package over here, and we need to create an instance of the Razorpay new Razorpay, and this will need the key and the secret. So we'll get it from process.env. So let me add those variables over here. Razorpay key ID and Razorpay secret. So let me just add it. Okay, and in order to get it from the process.env, so we have to use the .env, require .env.config. Let's make this tab Razorpay process.env, and this one is Razorpay key ID, and then the key secret is the process.env dot Razorpay secret. After the Razorpay instance is created, we'll get the payload from the req.body, and then we have to create the order. We'll use async await over here. So for that, I'll make this as async, and Razorpay dot orders dot create, and here I'll pass the options. So if order is not returned, then we will return status as 500 and we'll send an error. Otherwise, we will send the order in the response. We can also put this in a try catch. There can be some error in this await. In case of error, we can again send error, and let's console log this error. Okay, so the order API is created. Since this is a post API and there's some payload involved, so we'll also need to use some middlewares. One is express.json. The other one is express.url encoded extended false. So we'll also need to use the CORS because we'll be making the API call from some other port. So that will give us a CORS issue. So we'll also need to use the CORS package over here, app.use CORS. So let's try this out. So in the package.json, I'll add a start script, and I'll use nodemon and nodemon index.js. So let's see if this works. Npm start. Okay, so one thing I just forgot to add, which is app.listen port number over here, and the callback we can say listening on port and then the port number. So now npm start. Okay, so this is listening on port 5000. Now let's make this API call 5000 order, and in the request body again we'll send the same request body that we send over here. Okay, this is working fine. So our API is just a pass through, so it is making the Razorpay API call, but it's a pass through, and it allows us to not expose the API secret on the client side. The create react app checkout is done. Now let's start this cd client. Now in the app.js, I will remove all this and will render a product over here. So for that, I will create a product component, and let me create a product component, and inside the product component, render a simple hard-coded product t-shirt. Let me add some descriptions, and I'll need an image over here. Add an image, and I'll also add a button, and on the button I will add pay text. Okay, so for the image, let's get an image, and let's import this, import svg, and let's render this product. So this looked something like this. Let's give some basic styling to this. So I'll remove all this. I'll give it a div and a class name. So in an actual scenario, so the information should be passed as a props to this component, and all this information should be dynamic, but this is just done for the sake of simplicity. Image width as 200 pixel. Now let's integrate the payment flow inside this product.js. First, we need to hit the orders API in order to generate the order ID. That will do on the click of this pay button. So I'll add an on click event to this, and we'll add a method which is say payment handler, and let's define this method. So inside this method, so first we will hit that order API which we had done over here. So we'll make this method as async so that we can use await fetch this specific URL, and the method will be post, and in the body we have to pass few of the parameters. We'll pass these parameters. Let's define few of the variables over here. For the receipt ID, again this will be passed from the props, but let's just hard code it now. We'll pass this information in the request body, and then we'll also need to pass some of the headers over here. Type as application JSON. This response, whatever we get, we have to convert it into a JSON. Again, we'll use await over here. So this will be the final order ID that we'll get. So let's check if this works so far, and then we'll proceed further. Okay, so we have got the order ID over here. If we switch to the network tab, then this API call is success and we have got the order over here. As a next step, we have to integrate the checkout flow. So for that, we will use the same handler function approach. We have to add this script in our index.html. So we have the index.html in the public, so either we can load this script dynamically, so that is also a possible way, and the other way is that you can just include this script in your index.html. So both ways will work. And then we have to create this options, and we have to generate a Razorpay instance. Copy up to here. So options, so here you have to provide the ID, so you don't have to provide the secret, but you just have to provide the key ID. Amount, we already have the variable defined for it. Currency also we have the variable defined. Name, so you have to provide the company name. For now we'll just use the default name. Order ID, so order we got over here, and instead of hard coded order ID, order.id, and inside the handler we will get the response, and here are some details that we can pre-fill. Let me quickly change the name. It looks like a dummy contact number, so this is still fine. And after that it will generate a new Razorpay instance, new window.razorpay, so it's able to get the Razorpay from the global window object. And then we have a failure handler over here, and in addition to that, on click of this we have to do razorpay.open and event.prevent default. Now let's try this out if this works. So if I click on pay, okay, so this is giving us that payment interface, and let's choose the UPI over here, and let's pass the mobile number. Okay, so this is successful. Okay, so this has given us a payment ID, the order ID, and this is the signature. Payment was successful. Now, as a next step, we have to verify whether this payment was valid or not. Verify payment signature. So we can also store the three fields that it returned on the server side, which can be used to validate it later. Now, in order to verify the payment signature, again, this verification has to be done on the server side. So we'll create a Node.js API for that. So I'll create a new API, which I'll name /order/validate. For this, we'll need the crypto package. So crypto is inbuilt within Node.js, so we don't need to install this. And we'll pass three fields that we got on the client side as a request.body. So what we got on the client side, if we check over here, so if we check the response, then we get these three things: Razorpay payment ID, order ID, and the signature, right? We'll send these three things to the server and we'll need it over there to actually validate them. And Razorpay has we have to generate an HMAT SHA-256, and it should be created with the help of order ID and the Razorpay payment ID, and we have to use the secret. So in this case, the secret will be the secret that was generated from the Razorpay dashboard. So this is the API key secret. So we'll need API key secret, the payment ID, and the order ID. We'll need these three things, and we'll generate the signature and whatever the signature that Razorpay has returned over here. So it'll check the signature that it has returned over here, and whatever we are generating using this algorithm, both should match. So only if both are matching, then only the payment has to be successful. So say sha crypto dot create hmat, and for the algorithm we'll use sha-256. For the secret we'll use process.env dot Razorpay secret, and then sha.update. So here we have to use the same pattern that they have suggested. So check over here order ID and then the Razorpay payment ID. Okay. So we have the order ID, this Razorpay order ID over here, and then there's a pipe, and then we have the Razorpay payment ID. Digest equal to sha digest. We'll use hex encoding, and if the digest doesn't match with the Razorpay signature, then we'll return that the payment is invalid. Status 400 and .json. And if this matches, then we'll send the message as success, and we'll mirror the order ID. This is a simple API that we have added. Now we have to integrate this API. We'll integrate it over here where we got the handler. So after the payment is done, the control goes to the handler. So we'll validate the payment over here and we'll make the new API call. Instead of alert, I'll create a request body and then I'll use await. So you have to make this function again as async, and I'll make this API call /validate is a post type, and in the body we'll use json.stringify the body, and we'll also pass the header /json validate response. Then will have to convert it to JSON and then print it out. After we get a success over here, then we can ensure that this transaction is successful. So let me refresh this again. Let's click on pay. So there are some errors in the iframe, so we can ignore that. And again, let's enter my UPI mobile number. Payment is successful. Okay, so we got a message success, order ID and the payment ID. So this validate API call over here is also success. This transaction is actually successful. Now over here, what we can also do is we can show a success message over here, or we can show a success pop-up over here. And if I go to the Razorpay dashboard, let's check that whether this payment was captured successfully. So if I go to the transactions, so if I check it November 14th and the current timestamp 9:24, 9:23. So this is actually captured. Also check the payment ID HGC. There are a few other ways to verify the payment status. So one is from the dashboard, but this is manual. We can also subscribe to the webhook events, or we can poll the Razorpay APIs. So in order to use the webhook events, so webhook is very useful. So we again need to go to the account and settings, and we have to go to the webhooks over here, and you have to click on add a webhook on any of these events. So you can see that you can attach to these events like payment failed, payment captured, payment dispute, all these events. So whenever these events will occur, then it will hit your specific webhook URL that you have provided, and it will prompt with this specific message. So you can also use a Slack webhook or MS Teams webhook or your own URL. So let me provide an email over here and let's see if this works. So I'm checking everything. So let's generate a sample webhook URL. Created this webhook, and now let's click on create. So webhook has been created and this has been enabled. Now let's try a fresh transaction. Received something on the webhook, and if you check over here, so we have got these events: order paid, okay, all these details over here on the webhook, and then payment captured event, and then the payment is authorized. So we have got these three API hits on our webhook URL that we have provided over here. So that was a brief overview of how we can integrate the Razorpay in a React application. I also showed you how we can create the Node.js APIs in order to validate the payment and in order to generate the order ID. So that was about it. So I hope you enjoyed. So if you have any questions or any concerns, feel free to add in the comment. We'll respond it as soon as possible. If you're new to the channel, then hit the subscribe button and support us. Thank you.